I am here speaking from our experiences with Climate Solutions University, which is a program of the Model Forest Policy Program that is produced in collaboration with the Cumberland River Compact, which is a nonprofit watershed group where I am a program director, and also with Key Log Economics, a natural resource economist that we work with to produce Climate Solutions University. The program is a distance learning program where we work with communities, 4 to 6 communities each year, a distance learning program to walk them through an adaptation planning process. And then we go on to support their planning implementation in future years. We have worked with 33 communities across the country so far, and you can see sort of the distribution there, mostly the rim areas and not very much in the middle of the country. But this program we've been working with adaptation and evolving our approach to it through the years, and so you're going to get some of the benefit of what we've been able to do through the years in approaching this concept of resilience and adaptation, and our thinking as it has evolved over the years. So you've been hearing some excellent background information on climate change this morning. And you may remember that earlier this year, it was noted that 2014 was the hottest record year ever for global average temperatures. And this was the way it looked on my television set at home when Brian Williams was telling about it, and then it was translated to our local meteorologist in Nashville, Tennessee, which is where I'm based. And it falls into one of the warmest decades ever as well. And I bring this up because this topic of climate and water is very much related to temperature. There is this intimate relationship between water and temperature. Anybody who has boiled water or frozen an ice cube knows the dramatic relationship between temperature and water and how much of a difference it can make. And you saw earlier another version of this chart with all of the permutations that can cause in our atmosphere and our hydrologic cycle. There is this profound impact on our water resources from these rising temperatures. And the connection between that, the physics of the atmospheric changes, and to people is this concept of ecosystem services. Ecosystem services are those products that come from nature that benefit people in some tangible or direct way. And in the water system, which we're focusing on right now, there are 3 elements to the water system. There's water quantity, too much or too little. There's water quality, the different pollutants that can occur. And then third, the water timing, which is critical to the ecological processes. So climate change is affecting all 3 of these, and there are resulting consequences from the impacts to these 3 elements of the water system. And we are, as we have talked about, we are very much seeing direct impacts to the changes in our weather extremes all across the country, and then the cost accumulating because of that. In 2014 alone, there were 12 extreme weather events that had a price tag of over $1 billion on them somewhere in the country. And that's just last year. One of our communities last year did an exploration of the National Flood Insurance Program costs for the Delaware River Basin, and they saw that their costs went up from $42 million a year from weather-related events to $107 million a year just between 2004 and 2006. That's just one small community. So how do we go after these drastic changes that are happening to our systems? Well, the good news is that climate resilience and good, sound watershed stewardship have a lot in common. They really are very similar. And you can talk about watershed stewardship without even using the word climate and get a lot of the same benefits that we're aiming for climate change resilience. And in its simplest concept, watershed stewardship is about trying to get the landscape to perform in the hydrologic cycle as if it were still a forest canopy cover. That's its natural state. And so we're trying to get this altered landscape to behave when the rain hits it as if it were still tree canopy. And we know a lot about good ways to do that, both with natural systems and also with engineered systems, to mimic what nature is doing. And ultimately, we're trying to get back to this: what would a healthy watershed look like, with its vegetated cover, with its biological corridors, natural channels that are allowed to move when they need to, good water quality, and a variety of habitat. That would be what we were aiming at with our interventions for adaptation. And that natural state that we're looking for is important because there is this connection between forest cover and water sources. And this chart here shows us that the majority, over 50%, up to 60% of our water sources in the US are there because of the forest cover that treats that water and provides it to us slowly through its natural systems. So without enough forest cover, we would not have the water supply that we have now. So as Climate Solutions University has been working with communities around the country, we began focusing a lot on the rural communities. Those were the places where adaptation was not being focused on. Most of it was about energy in the cities 10 years ago. And so we focused in on protecting that forest cover and the natural systems that are providing those ecosystem services. And as time has evolved, we've expanded our approach to now include a holistic systems approach. So not only are we working with those rural forest covers and farm areas, but also the cities that they're connected to, and looking at the system as a whole. So we're viewing this system, in this case, an example of the watershed that feeds water to Sacramento. We're thinking about it from that rural point of view, looking downstream. What do they see for that whole system that connects them to the city? And then we look at it from the urban point of view, the people living in Sacramento, looking upstream. What do they see about that whole city, and how are they, or that whole system, and how are they connected? That is our challenge with taking a regional approach to resilience. And so that what adaptation or resilience looks like is different in each place, but the important thing is to understand the connection between them. How are they related? How do they support each other in a regional context? It's more about land use, land cover in the rural setting. It's more about, in the urban area, green infrastructure, water conservation, water management, but they're the same, the goals are very similar in very different settings. So I'm going to go through just a few examples of what that adaptation approach can look like in some of the communities that we've worked with, or other good examples that I know about. The first one is Santa Fe, New Mexico. We worked with the Santa Fe Watershed Association there, who led the adaptation planning process for the entire Santa Fe River watershed. Santa Fe has about 70,000 people, and their watershed flows from a national forest in the upper reaches down through the city of Santa Fe and then on into the Cochiti Pueblo downstream. And very often the Santa Fe River disappears before it ever gets to the Native American reservation. So their first approach to this was working with the National Forest Service and addressing the risk of wildfire. And you can see the purple areas around the watershed there on the lower right. Those were wildfires that happened around Santa Fe and was really their wake-up call. And so they acted proactively before they had a major fire that affected their reservoirs, and put in place a program to adapt to the fire conditions, to use prescribed burn and fuels reductions to reduce the impact, the potential impact to their water. They put together a public-private partnership with the city, the Forest Service, private foundations, and government grants. And they have managed to treat that upper 5,500 acres and drastically reduce their risk of catastrophic fire to their water supply. And it's estimated that the $5 million that they're going to spend over 20 years in this process could save as much as $240 million in what it would cost them to recover from a major fire that then devastates their reservoirs with erosion and sedimentation. So it's an excellent investment of private and public dollars. And I'll go on to say that now, as a result of their planning process with us, they're focusing on what they're doing in the city of Santa Fe. And there they're focusing on management of rainwater so that they get maximum infiltration. They're going away from the old model of letting it run off and run downstream quickly. And what that's going to do is increase the groundwater, and their goal is to bring the Santa Fe River back to a living river that is still flowing downstream when it gets to the Pueblo. Another interesting example is Ashland, Oregon. We worked with the Southern Oregon Forest Restoration Collaborative in Oregon, who did an adaptation plan for the Rogue River Basin. And there they have also worked public-private partnerships to put together a fuels reduction program around Ashland. The city of Ashland worked with the Forest Service to create a project that would reduce their fire risk. And one of the things I love about this is they connected it with jobs creation and ecological skills programs for the rural inhabitants there that can use those to go on and have productive careers and jobs. So it was beneficial on multiple levels. Another one that's connected to the city of Sacramento is the Yellow Bypass, which is a project. The goal of it was to reduce the risk of flooding to the city of Sacramento, which they're very prone to there. And what they did was develop a diversion project so that at very high flow rates in flood conditions, water is diverted into this wetland area outside the city. And that wetland area is now a multi-use purpose. It is used for rice farming, it's used for recreation, and it's wildlife wetland habitat. So it's an example of how the city can work with what's coming to them from upstream and create an adaptive multi-purpose use. And then one example that you may have heard of is the Denver example, the program that they call Forest to Faucet, where Denver was affected by multiple forest fires over a period of years that cost them tens of millions of dollars to address and severely threatened their water supply to Denver. And so they, again, put together a large consortium that has worked on land conservation and forest protection that is really protecting their water supply in a significant way that wasn't happening before. And there are other examples that I could talk about. But I think the theme that you're hearing from these examples where cities have worked with their region is that it's been from the ground up. It's been local communities, in some cases working with a federal agency, in other cases not, but it's been originated at the local level through visionaries who see that this makes a lot of sense to do. Another example that I want to touch on that needs this regional approach but hasn't gotten there yet is Northern California. And I know you're all very aware of the drought conditions. How many of you have reported on the California drought in some way recently? A few of you, so you're familiar with that. So this is a map of the watershed area, the source water area that feeds water to the city of Sacramento. The Nature Conservancy did a wonderful report where they mapped the source water area for every major urban area in California so they could see where the forested areas are that their water is coming from. And this just happens to be the Sacramento one. And they went on to analyze how protected that watershed was. And so this is a chart showing the different levels of protection all the way from developed to farmland to some level of protection or highest level of protection. And if we look at the Sacramento area there, what we can see is well over 50% of it is either already developed or farmland or no protection. And then less than, well under 10% is considered well protected. So less than 10% of the watershed for Sacramento is not in a safe condition in terms of land ownership or protection status of some kind. So this is an area that needs that kind of a regional approach, and a collaborative effort is called for, but they're not there yet. In spite of the fact that California's been very forward-looking and has asked all of their local jurisdictions to do a climate plan, still the infrastructure to create those regional approaches is not there. So to pull us together, these are some of the concepts that we have for what that urban-rural connected resilience, regional resilience, could look like. It needs to be approached as a holistic, systematic analysis. It can be rested upon an ecosystem services framework so that we're paying attention to the services that people need and rely upon, at the same time doing that by protecting the natural systems that are in place. And there needs to be a give and take bilaterally so that the urban resources support conservation work in the rural areas who do not have the resources to do this on their own. And then the urban area receives all these ecosystem services benefits that are out of their jurisdictional control, that they cannot protect except in collaboration with the regions around them. We emphasize in all things, how does this benefit the vulnerable populations, both in the urban areas as well as the tribes in the rural areas? And ultimately, we're aiming at regional resilience that drives decision makers, that drives investment decisions, policy decisions, landowner decisions, and resource management decisions. So that's the ideal that we would be aiming for. And my last message really is that the opportunity to do that is with us. The climate crisis or the climate challenge, I'm a believer in that old saying that the bigger the crisis, the bigger the opportunity. And so bringing ourselves up to resilient standards in the face of this mega challenge that we have is an opportunity to fix a lot of the problems in our system. And so these are some of the questions that come to my mind, and as I sort of try to put myself in your shoes as journalists, what are some of the questions that you as journalists could be exploring that would inform this process for all of us? It's clear from what you've seen and will continue to see today, climate resilience makes really great economic sense. So why is it not getting more traction? Where are the obstacles? Why does that economic argument not carry more weight in our communities these days? Food and water security are at the base of what we're talking about. That is the ultimate ground level risk management. Again, why is that not a higher priority in our state and national decision making? Why is it just the local communities who are getting this? And recognizing that we cannot reach true resilience unless there's a large landscape approach to this, where are the national programs or the state programs that would incentivize this, that would give a structure to this, make it more doable? And then finally, with the growing number of local success stories, why do we not hear more about them? Why do you not know more about them? Why are they not being replicated? So I'm hoping some of you will take climate on as a focus area for you, recognize that it's connected to everything that we do, wherever you are, and make this a focus area for ongoing work. The Climate Solutions University is taking applications now for our communities to work with next year. And so I would encourage you to be aware of that. Send people our way that might be interested in that and joining us next year. My contact is here, and Nancy Gilliam is the Executive Director of the Model Forest Policy Program. She's also here today, and we're both happy to talk with you about this more today. Thank you.